Hello and welcome back to In Search of Wonder, my channel here on YouTube. My name is Anne, and today I have an original booktube tag. November is always a good time for reflecting on gratefulness and reasons why you are grateful and what you are grateful for, and just spending time to give thanks for all of the blessings that you have, given that here in the United States we have Thanksgiving towards the end of November. So I thought it would be appropriate to count my blessings in books, both literally and figuratively. So that is what this tag is. Feel free, I will put the text for the questions in the description box, so feel free to snag them and film your own counting your blessings tag video, and I hope you have as much fun with it as I had fun coming up with it. So to start with, the very first prompt is how many books? Go ahead and try to count them. And I did not actually try to count all of my books. That would have taken significantly much more time than it is worth. What I did was I counted one shelf that seemed to represent an average-ish sort of number of books on my shelf. And I found that there were 40. And then I multiplied that by the number of shelves that I have that contain actual books. I did not count my shelves with songbooks, which I have 2 shelves full of those, or my photo albums or whatever. So I have a huge thing of bookshelves behind me, but I only counted 14 of the shelves as the books. So in actual physical books on my shelves, I have approximately 560, which is what I calculated. And on top of that, at work, I have another collection of books. I'm just gonna guess 50. That may be a little high, but if we split the difference and say 560 plus 40, that's probably pretty accurate. Let's bump it up to 600 because I use a lot of books at work, but they belong to me, so I bought them. So let's say 600. And then I calculated, or I looked up on Kindle, which by the way, strangely, I have to look up on the Amazon website, on my account on Amazon. It doesn't say anywhere, at least that I could find, on my actual Kindle, which I thought was sort of silly. But anyways, on Amazon website, according to the information there, I have 580 books in my Kindle, which I didn't realize it was that many. So that brings us to 1,080 some plus, give or take. I have some other little stashes of books here and there elsewhere, so we could probably easily round that up to 1,100 and not be lying. So that is a lot of books. That is a lot of blessings. 1,100. So that is question number 1. Question number 2 is life-changing books. What are some books that changed you or profoundly impacted you in a positive way? I'm going to move my computer where I can see it and not have to be looking over my shoulder strangely like that, so I can read my questions that I made. Okay, so there could be many answers to this question, so I'll try to stick to a few that as I look back at my life I can say. First of all, I still remember the book clearly, which is quite a feat for me. If I can remember it 20, 30, 40 years later, at least the gist of it, what it was about, then that was clearly very impactful. Yeah, the ones that stood out as being memorable to me. And also I tried to pick some that I haven't necessarily mentioned on other videos. I know I have mentioned Christie as being a profound book in my life, and that's for sure. And there are a couple of others that I've spoken about. So I tried to pick some additional ones that have been very impactful for me. The first one I read as a teenager, and it was an assigned book for school. I don't know for which class, but probably I needed to read a biography for something. Anyway, so I read a biography of Oswald Chambers, who wrote, his wife compiled notes from his speeches and things that he had written throughout his life to create the devotional books, My Utmost for His Highest, which are really good devotional books if you happen to have not read them yet. He is the author of those via his wife. I'm pretty sure it was posthumously compiling them and editing them into the book format that they are today. But I read his biography. I will put up a picture of the one that I read, because right now I can't think of the author, but I can picture the book in my mind. So I don't have a copy. I think I read my mom's copy. Again, I was a teenager, so I don't have my own copy. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think I should probably try to buy one for myself, because it was I really enjoyed reading it, and it was very impactful for me. What affected me so profoundly about his life and testimony was his utmost dedication to the Lord, and his willingness to sacrifice everything. In World War II, he was actually stationed in Africa, in Egypt, I think, as a chaplain. And it was such a hard life for those, I was like 4 or 5 years, I think, that he was stationed there, and in the desert. And in the biography that I read, they showed pictures of before he went to Africa and served there, and after. And it looked like he had aged a good 10 to 15 years at least. It was so difficult on him, physically and emotionally and spiritually. And yet he did it cheerfully. He gave everything of himself in that time. But that was how he lived his whole life. And just an extremely dedicated, sacrificial attitude is how he lived his life. And it really inspired me and challenged me as a teenager. So that was one. And then another one that I read as a young mom that really impacted me. I wish that I could look back and say that I lived up to the ideals in the book, but it definitely challenged me and inspired me and shaped my motherhood in the most positive way, I think, of any of the books that I read, and about parenting and motherhood, etc. And that was The Mission of Motherhood by Sally Clarkson. And she has a couple books specifically on motherhood, but that one I just read first, and I mean, I was underlining things and highlighting things and jotting down notes, and I even gave a talk based on it at a ladies' conference that I helped to run 10 years ago or so. Anyway, it definitely shaped me very much as a mom. But strangely, I think I must have lent it to someone, because I can't find it on my shelves anywhere, and I know that's one I would have kept. So I'm pretty sure. Why would I have given it away? I don't know. So another one that I don't have a copy of to show you, ridiculously, but that was very good. Another, the last one is one that I read more recently, and I do have, and that is A Gospel Primer for Christians. And this is one that I plan to reread on a regular basis. I probably will reread this over Christmas break. I like to read, as I head into the new year, to read books that I know have challenged and inspired me. In the past, I've read Christy. I've read some other things over Christmas break, but I think I might reread this one. It's just so good. Sometimes as Christians, it's easy to just, in the day-to-day life, forget how much we still need the gospel and how much we need to walk in the gospel, and how that is where the grace is, and where the sanctification happens, and where we change to become more like Christ, is the gospel working out in our everyday life. And here's the blurb on the back that kind of explains that a little better than I just did. To the Christians in Rome, the Apostle Paul says, "I am eager to preach the gospel to you who are at Rome." And that's in Romans chapter 1. Evidently, Christians need to hear the gospel even after conversion. And A Gospel Primer for Christians is designed to help you do just that. By showing you how you can preach the gospel to yourself each day, this book will help you savor the glories of God's love and experience the life-transforming power of the gospel in all areas of life. Use this book to preach the gospel to yourself on a daily basis and be amazed at the difference it can make in your life. And that is by Milton Vincent is the author. It also has, at the back, it has a couple of different ways that you can work on like memorizing these truths, and so really getting them into your heart. And one is in the form of kind of like answers to a catechism, like a catechism, but without the questions. And so you can do it that way. Or it has a poem, which is really cool. Very, very simple, like a simple poetic version of the gospel narrative. And yeah, super, super good book for believers. I really think especially for second or third generation believers. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I feel like sometimes we have the hardest time really grasping the power of the gospel to change us in our everyday lives and to make us into what God wants us to be. So that one definitely is a recent read that was profoundly impactful in my life. So then the next question, number 3, is special editions. What are some editions and copies that you really love? First editions, special editions, cloth, hardback, leather-bound, signed, or is there a book that is very valuable to you for sentimental reasons? So I have a short stack here. First of all, I think I have shown this before in another video, but you may not have seen it. This is More Than Meets the Eye by Karen Whitmire, and I won this in a giveaway a couple years ago, and it's signed by the author. So that's one. And then I have this one. So 2 years ago, well, at this point it'd be 1.5 years ago, in the summer, our vacation, not this past summer, but the summer before, we went on a road trip to Missouri with my family. My parents live in Missouri, and so we were going to meet them there, and we stayed in some log cabins in Branson, Missouri. And then we went to the homestead of Almanzo and Laura Ingalls Wilder and toured the museum there, which if you are ever in that area, I highly recommend. They have so many actual artifacts of the things that are talked about in the books that Ma kept, I don't know where, since they lived in a wagon and those things were tiny, and then they lived in a little sod house, and then they lived in a little log cabin, and then their house in South Dakota was not that large either. So I don't know where she kept those things, but she kept those treasures and preserved them, and you can find them there and look at them, and it's just like, I remember reading about that. By far, my most favorite moment there was Pa's fiddle. You can see Pa's fiddle there, which, I mean, I just really don't need anything more from life. That was a moment that I still remember. Anyway, at that museum, they had this special edition of Little House on the Prairie. To celebrate the 75th anniversary of Laura Ingalls Wilder's timeless classic, this gorgeous new hardcover edition features Garth Williams' charming illustrations in vibrant, full color. So this, and I think this was the only one in the series that was done like that. I could be wrong, but it's the only one they had available for sale at the bookstore. So I got it, and I also got, they had this little book plate there with a picture of her about the age she was when she was writing these stories, and then her signature. So technically this is a signed book too. Anyways, and then some of the illustrations. Okay, my son is watching football downstairs and is making strange noises. I don't know if you can hear them. Here's some illustrations. And the feel of these, like, this is such high quality paper. Like, this is one of my favorite books that I love to own just because it's beautiful and because I love the book and because I have really good memories associated with it. So this book is a meaningful one for me for those reasons. Additionally, 2 years ago, So there's not too far down the road, down the highway from me, there is a town, and they have like 3 or 4 in a row antique shops, but also like shops where they have a lot of vendors. I'm sure there's a word for this type of place, but where they have a lot of vendors who refurbish items or recycle, upcycle, salvage things. They also have like the salvaged materials, like window shutters or hooks or doorknobs, or, you know, salvaged materials that people can use to upcycle. So you can get raw materials, or you can buy the things that people have already remade with them, that sort of thing. Also, they have occasionally like some antique or vintage items. So a couple years ago, we were shopping there, and they had these adorable little vintage hardback copies of Shakespeare's books, and in varying conditions. So I bought this one because I had just recently read the Shakespeare that this one is, which is The Winter's Tale. Okay, that's weird, because this is the front of the book. Okay, and you can see, I don't know if you can see that little embossed part there. But then The Winter's Tale, the title goes this way. Is that weird? I feel like it should go this way if this is the front of the book. Anyway, now I cannot find when it was published. So I have no idea when it was published. So I don't know. And then this is the inside front cover. So I love this little book. I didn't read from it. I'd already just read The Winter's Tale and I loved it. So that's why I got it. And then here's the back inside cover. Anyway, just a beautiful little copy, vintage, that I love. And then, I don't think that, I think someone got this for me, but I can't think now who. It might have been one of my sisters. Possibly I picked it up somewhere, but I don't think so. I think someone got it for me, knowing that Les Miserables is one of my favorite stories of all time. And I have a small collection of Les Miserables things, but this one is a 2-volume set of the books. Again, vintage copies. So I couldn't find when it was printed. No, that was from the original publication, that date. So it's not it. So I don't know when this particular copy was printed, but it has this signature on the front that says 1905. I don't know if it's that old. It doesn't feel that old to me. So I don't know if like that was when he was born. Maybe it's when he had the book. I guess it could be. And it's just been really well kept. Anyway, but it's Les Miserables in 2 volumes. And the second volume has the same, there's a little page of a French version. But then the second volume also has his name and the same year in it. It's by the A.L. Burt Company, published in New York. Anyway, so those are my special editions. And question number 4 is gifted books. Books you love that others have gifted to you. And I have so many that I could show you right now. And even the stack that I settled on is kind of big, but I'll try to go through them quickly. This one, Newton and Polly by Jody Headland, one of my sisters gave me for Christmas several years ago. And it was so good. This is probably my favorite book by Jody Headland, and she's one of my authors that I like to read. But this one is far and away my favorite of all the ones that she's written. She stays true to the story of John Newton and his eventual wife, Polly. It's the story of their courtship and also John Newton's wildlife and his conversion, etc. And it doesn't go too much, I don't think, into their life after that, after they were married. But it was so good. And honestly, if it doesn't sound wrong to say this, a totally swoony love story. And I was looking up about John Newton afterwards, and it just seemed so true to life for who these people were and what they experienced, and the things that we know for sure about their lives and who they were as people, etc. Really good. And then one of my sisters is a reseller, so she buys things, you know, cheaper discount or whatever, and then resells on various online marketplaces. And so sometimes she will pick up things, like she'll buy a whole lot or collection of something, and she'll take out what she can use, and then she'll give the rest. And so that was the situation here, I think. She gave me this beautiful, beautiful copy of Little Women. It's from the Illustrated Junior Library Collection. Nice hardback with beautiful illustration on the cover. And then inside, so this was Grosset and Dunlap 1994 printing of this, and it has illustrations in it, and then you can see on the margins it shows the chapter. No, I'm sorry, that's the page number. That's the page number. That's where the page number is. That's so cool. Chapter and page number. So this is the chapter title and then the page number. And then it has some more full color illustrations. So it's just a really beautiful copy of Little Women. And actually it's one of 3 that I have, but I can't get rid of any of them because they're all so beautiful in their own way. And as a general rule, I don't like to have more than 1 copy of a book, but I make exceptions. And then just this past Christmas, another sister, I have a lot of sisters. So when I say my sister, it's probably not usually the same one because I have a lot. Anyways, this one is from one of my sisters. She gave to me last Christmas because she knows I'm a big Janeite and all things Austen I love automatically. So this is Jane Austen cover to cover. So this is the various cover art of Jane Austen's books, which is super cool. And I have not ever actually read this through because it also has some information about Austen and her books. But this is, look, how cool is that? The first printing. What it looked like and a little detail about it. That was Sense and Sensibility. This was the first edition, Pride and Prejudice. And then all of the various itinerations of them. Look at this one. So super, super cool. This one is Mansfield Park. I love it. Oh, it even has like foreign. This is a Russian one. Гордость и предубеждение by Jane Austen. Иллюстрированная, адаптированная классика. Illustrated adaptation of the classic Pride and Prejudice. I actually have Jane Austen. Got this when I was a teenager. It has 3 of her books. So you see, it tells you in English the books that she has. Then it's Russian on the other side. And I am not Russian, but I lived in Russia for a time when I was a teenager. So I picked this up because Jane Austen. What other reason do you need? This one is Sense and Sensibility. So cool. Nobody gave this to me. I bought this with my own money, so it doesn't really fit in this category, but I was just reminded of it by the other one. And I actually read part of, it was part of my Russian lessons. When I got to the point where I was capable of doing this, I actually read Pride and Prejudice, Гордость и, this is such a long word, предубеждение. There's the opening illustration. And you can see Oh, I was putting the accent marks. So I guess I must have had to read it aloud to my teacher. So I put the accent marks. Here's the first opening sentence. Все знают, что молодой человек, располагающий средствами, должен подыскать себе жену. I think I messed up that middle phrase. Располагающий средствами, должен подыскать себе жену. Must find himself a wife. Anyways, and then I think also here I was underlining words or phrases I wasn't sure about. And it's kind of like one of the goals of my life that I'm probably never going to get to. Oh man, I underlined a lot of words there. I was struggling. It is one of the goals of my life to actually read the whole thing in Russian, but I've not done that. And I guess I got to chapter 5. I read the first 5 chapters because I don't have anything else underlined. Either that I was just so good I didn't underline anything after that. That did not happen. So anyways, that was a brief rabbit trail. Moving on, another book that another sister gave me was this book, The Gershwins and Me, A Personal History in 12 Songs by Michael Feinstein? How do I not know how to say that name? Why do I struggle with people's names so much? I have no idea. And then here is the inside cover. It's really pretty. So this is one of those like coffee table kind of books, which I don't have a coffee table. Otherwise, if I did, I would totally set this out there. For Ira. You can see that. Ira Gershwin, being George's brother. Should probably go there. And it's got photographs. Anyway, so lots of ephemera scanned into here that you can see. So I think it's somewhat a biography, walks through their musical career and their life, George and Ira Gershwin, but also a lot of pictures and just something to enjoy looking at and browsing through. So anyways, that is another really cool book that has been given to me. And then my husband has gotten me a couple box sets of my favorite authors. So this is, and I've shown these before. This is the Bronte collection, and I love these are cloth bound ones. And the Jane Austen collection. The Blessing of a Book. How has reading benefited you in your life? Emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Sometimes it's difficult to quantify these things, but definitely I feel like one huge value of books that I think has benefited me in my life is it's the building up of empathy, because you cannot experience everything that there is to experience in the world in terms of emotions, you know, joy, different kinds of love, or different ways love is expressed or demonstrated or felt, or sadness or grief, you know, all of these different emotions that we have. We experience them all, but in different ways and with different situations and for different reasons. But if we read about the experiences that others have, I think it helps to build empathy in our lives for people going through situations that we have never been through and experiencing emotions and things that we have never personally experienced, but we witnessed it in a way through a book. So I think that books can really help make us emotionally stronger people who can empathize and sympathize more readily with people who are suffering, or with people who are experiencing joy, or anything really, any kind of emotion. Mentally, I mean, there's obviously like teaching things. Nonfiction obviously teaches you about many things you wouldn't otherwise know. But even fiction, especially, it's one reason why I love to read a historical fiction, because I feel like it teaches me so much more about history than I would learn just reading a textbook or reading, dry data about a time period in history. Putting names and faces and stories and situations and experiences and emotions to what is happening makes it stick a lot better. So much of what I knew about history, I have learned in fiction, actually. And I also think that reading books helps give you perspective, because otherwise you can get stuck in your own mind and how you think things. But reading can help you experience a situation from the other end, rather than the one that you would naturally fall into. I can see what it's like to look at a situation from someone in a different position than I am. And then spiritually, books that explicitly expound on spiritual truth, like nonfiction books, but also via fiction, books can still teach us so much spiritual truth, even not explicitly. Like, it doesn't have to be that the character or the narration in the story gives the gospel message, spells it out word for word. It can be demonstrated by the storyline and by what's happening in the story. I feel like, I think I've said this before, but I feel like the best stories are all about the story and show us some facet of God's plan for redemption. And that's why the best books have a strong context of good versus evil and the triumph of the good over the evil. And I think all of them are just speak to that truth in our hearts and speak it into our hearts. So I think that books have many blessings for our life, that are not physical and therefore difficult to quantify and count, actually, one by one, but still there and enriching our lives in many ways. And finally, friends, the greatest blessing. Do you have in real life friends that love to talk books with you? Give them a shout out and then tag your favorite booktube channels to do this tag. So I have a group I've mentioned before, a messenger group. We meet on Facebook Messenger, because that's a common thing that we all have. And it's my sisters and some friends of each of us. And we meet, we don't really meet at any official time or whatever. We just choose a challenge, a yearly challenge every year to do. And then we all, as our schedules permit, we read books from the challenge and we talk about what we've read and which ones we liked and which ones we didn't. We give suggestions to each other. Sometimes we talk about books that we're reading not related to the challenge if we find it interesting. So that is one of my favorite places. And I guess it's kind of not in real life because we do it virtually online, but I know all of those people in real life, like they're real life relations and friends of mine. So I really enjoy that. And then also I work at a school and I work at a classical school. So a lot of my coworkers and my colleagues are readers and they love to read books. So there are several of them, like very often at lunch break, we will go into conversations about books that we have read on a wide variety of topics. One of my coworkers recently read All the Light We Cannot See in preparation for the Netflix miniseries that's coming out, which I might get a Netflix subscription just to watch that. Anyway, so we've been, it was fun because she was reading it for the first time and it was fun to get her perspective and as she was going through the different parts of the book and her reactions to them. So I love talking about books with my coworkers. And also my older son is a big reader. So now he has very different tastes from mine. So he loves fantasy. He's starting to get into dystopian and neither of those are my favorite. Also, he's still reading a lot of middle grade books, not too much young adult really, because a lot of it's not honestly super appropriate for someone his age, but he does read a lot of classics for school. And so we like to talk about those. He is currently reading Pride and Prejudice in 9th grade and for literature class. And I love it. And he admitted to me, like, he was dreading it. He did not want to read it because, you know, he sees it's like a girl book, right? But he admitted to me that it actually was pretty funny, like, because the first few chapters, you know, with Mrs. Bennet and all of her antics about Mr. Bingley and all of that stuff. And I was like, isn't it funny? And he was like, yeah, I guess it's pretty funny. So, anyways. And then, as far as tagging people, I'm just going to tag a bunch of ladies, and feel free to do this tag, and feel free to not do this tag, no pressure whatsoever. And anybody else who wants to jump on this tag, go for it, have at it, have fun. But the ones I specifically am going to tag are Dia at Novel Idea, and Catherine at Read Journal Love, Kat at Cat Stories, Christy A. Cole, T at Faith Books Coffee, and Nikki at Writing for Jesus. So I can't wait to see your guys' answer to these questions. If you want to do this, tag, and have a wonderful and grateful Thanksgiving month of November. And I will see you next time. Thank you for stopping by and watching, and I hope you enjoy.